Welcome to r/Maliciouscompliance, the place where people share stories about how following the rules exactly, sometimes in unexpected or clever ways, can lead to surprising, often satisfying results. Today's story perfectly captures this idea. It's about a tenant who stood up to a greedy landlord by playing by the book, and ended up costing him a staggering $250,000. Imagine renting a beautiful house, living there for years, caring for it like it's your own, only to have the landlord suddenly change the rules and try to push you out with outrageous rent hikes and unfair demands. That's exactly what happened here. The landlord's family had owned this property for decades, but when the son took over, everything changed. This story shows how sometimes sticking strictly to the letter of the law and to your lease agreement can become a powerful tool. It's a reminder that greed and poor behavior can backfire, especially when the other side knows their rights and isn't afraid to use them. Now, let's dive into how this tenant's long-term positive relationship with the original landlord turned upside down when the son stepped in, and how what seemed like a simple rental dispute quickly turned into a costly lesson. I had been renting this spacious 5-bedroom home since 2008, nearly a decade before the drama started. The house was a comfortable 3,200 square feet located in a quiet neighborhood that was perfect for my family. The monthly rent was $1,600, which was a fair price back then, and it stayed that way for years. The original landlord was an older gentleman, kind and easy to work with. Over the years, I developed a good relationship with him. He trusted me to take care of the property, and since I'm pretty handy around the house, I often fixed things myself instead of bothering him. This arrangement worked well for both of us. I even invested in upgrading the house, adding useful features that made the home more comfortable and valuable. When the landlord passed away in 2024, I assumed things would stay the same. Unfortunately, his son Tyler inherited the property, and he was a completely different person. Where the father was respectful and reasonable, Tyler was eager to make money fast. He immediately sent me a notice about a rent increase, one that was nearly double the market rate for the area. I was shocked. I had lived there for years, cared for the place, and had never missed a payment. The property was well maintained thanks to me, but Tyler seemed to care only about squeezing more money out of me, ignoring the lease terms and the relationship I had built with his father. That's when the trouble began. Tyler's aggressive approach and disrespect for the lease agreement would soon trigger a chain of events that neither of us expected. Events that would lead to a massive financial loss for him and a hard-won victory for me. Tyler's arrival was like a storm. Unlike his father, who was calm and reasonable, Tyler was sharp, impatient, and clearly driven by greed. His first move was to announce a massive rent increase. The $1,600 monthly rent I'd been paying for years suddenly jumped to $4,000, a figure far above the local market rate. He sent an official notice declaring this new rent would take effect immediately. When I read the lease carefully, I found that it explicitly required a 3-month written notice before any rent increase could happen. Not only that, the lease terms also protected tenants from unreasonable hikes like this one. I decided to respond politely but firmly. I explained to Tyler that while I was willing to negotiate a fair rent increase, I could not accept such a drastic and sudden change, especially without proper notice as stated in the lease. I reminded him that I had been a long-term tenant, cared for the property, and always paid rent on time. Tyler was not interested in discussion. His response was angry and dismissive. Within days, I was served with an eviction notice. He claimed I had made unauthorized modifications to the property, using this as his reason to evict me immediately. I was stunned. I knew the lease required 3 months' notice to evict without cause, and this was clearly retaliation for refusing his unfair rent hike. But Tyler seemed determined to push me out by any means necessary. What followed would turn into a legal battle where every detail of the lease, property, and my rights would come into sharp focus. Tyler accused me of making unauthorized modifications to the house. He pointed to a dog door I had installed inside the back door as an example. However, I had the original door safely stored in the garage, and the dog door installation was done with permission from the previous landlord, my lease clearly stating I could make reasonable improvements. Besides the dog door, I had made many upgrades over the years. A tool shed in the yard, a pond, closet organizers, garage shelves, and updated kitchen appliances. I had receipts and written approvals for all of these improvements. I was confident these were my property rights as a tenant who had cared for the home long term. When Tyler moved to evict me claiming these modifications were unauthorized, I hired a lawyer to fight back. The legal battle centered on the lease terms and the evidence I provided, showing I had the right to make these changes and that Tyler had no legal cause to evict me without proper notice. The judge sided with me, ruling that Tyler's eviction attempt was unjustified and that I had to be given proper notice according to the lease. Importantly, the judge ordered that all modifications I had made be restored to their original state before I moved out, ensuring fairness for both parties. This legal decision was a turning point. It meant Tyler couldn't simply kick me out or keep the upgrades I had installed without compensation. The judge's order set the stage for what came next. My careful, deliberate removal of every modification, following the court's instructions exactly. After the court ruling, I faced a difficult decision: comply with the judge's order to restore the house to its original condition or face further legal trouble. But I wasn't going to make it easy for Tyler. Instead, I chose a path of malicious compliance. I would follow the order exactly, no more, no less, turning the tables on the greedy landlord in the most satisfying way. Emotionally, it was draining. Years of care, sweat, and money poured into improving the house were about to be erased. Still, I kept reminding myself this was about justice and standing up to unfair treatment. I took a deep breath and began the process of undoing everything I had done. I started small but meaningful. Ceiling fans I'd installed to keep the rooms cool had to come down. Faucets I had replaced with modern ones went back to their original versions, even though they leaked and didn't work well. Shelves and organizers that made storage easier were torn out, leaving empty, bare walls and closets. I repainted walls that I had brightened with fresh colors back to the dull, faded paint that was there when I first moved in. Every improvement that made the house more livable and comfortable was removed with precision. I didn't skip a single detail because that was exactly what the judge ordered. Although it felt like taking 2 steps backward, this act of malicious compliance gave me a quiet sense of control. I wasn't breaking any rules or laws. I was simply following instructions, exactly as they were given. The process of undoing the upgrades was methodical and exhausting. I started with the ceiling fans. Carefully, I unscrewed each one, disconnecting wiring and patching up holes in the ceilings. These fans had been a blessing during hot summers, but now the rooms were left with only the old, dusty light fixtures. Next came the faucets. The modern, efficient faucets I had installed were replaced with the original, outdated ones. They dripped constantly and were hard to turn. I couldn't help but feel frustrated every time I used them, knowing that these were the exact fixtures Tyler wanted back. In the closets and garage, I removed all the custom organizers and shelves I'd built. What had been neat, functional spaces turned back into cluttered, unusable storage. The tool shed in the yard was dismantled piece by piece and hauled away, leaving only an empty patch of dirt behind. I drained the small pond I'd created to bring some life and tranquility to the backyard. Watching it go felt like saying goodbye to a little oasis I had built for myself and my family. I also packed up the upgraded kitchen appliances, swapping them with the basic models Tyler insisted on having returned. Each step made the house look more worn and less inviting. The improvements that had added value and comfort vanished, leaving a hollow shell of what it had once been. I documented every change carefully, taking photos and saving receipts to prove I had done exactly what the court ordered. Throughout the process, I reflected on how absurd it was to have to strip a home of all the care and improvements a tenant had made. It felt like punishing someone for being responsible and invested in their living space. Yet, I took pride in knowing that by following the letter of the law, I was standing up to unfairness in a way Tyler hadn't anticipated. Unbeknownst to me at first, Tyler had already lined up a deal with a large corporate rental company interested in buying the house. The plan was to sell the property at a premium price, banking on the upgrades and improvements I had made over the years to justify a higher valuation. The upgraded appliances, organized storage spaces, and well-maintained yard were all part of the appeal that would attract a good offer. But my malicious compliance changed everything. When the buyer's representatives came to inspect the property, they were shocked to find a stripped-down, bare home that looked nothing like the attractive, upgraded unit Tyler had promised. The pond was gone, the tool shed dismantled, and all the thoughtful upgrades removed. Instead of a move-in ready home, it looked like a neglected shell requiring extensive work. The corporate rental company immediately saw the property as less valuable and more costly to renovate than they had expected. The buyer questioned Tyler's management and reliability, wondering if there were other hidden issues they hadn't yet uncovered. Their enthusiasm quickly faded. Tyler's plan to get a high sale price unraveled right before his eyes, because I followed the judge's order to the letter. My malicious compliance wasn't just a personal victory. It had become a major obstacle to the landlord's financial ambitions. As the sale negotiations stalled, Tyler's frustration grew. He scrambled to repair the damage I had caused by undoing all the upgrades. He spent thousands trying to reinstall appliances, repaint walls, and even refill the pond. But many of the original upgrades were either no longer available or prohibitively expensive to replace, leaving him with a patchwork of cheap fixes. The corporate buyer, now wary of Tyler's management, lowered their offer drastically. What had once been an expected sale of around $700,000 was slashed by nearly $250,000, more than a third of the property's value. The deal either fell through entirely or went through at a painfully reduced price. Tyler's reputation as a landlord suffered as word spread about the messy sale and his heavy-handed tactics with tenants. Other potential buyers and renters became hesitant to work with him, fearing similar disputes and legal battles. The financial blow was a harsh lesson for Tyler. Had he treated me fairly and communicated openly, he might have sold the property at full value without all this drama. Instead, his greed and attempts to strong-arm me backfired spectacularly. In the end, Tyler's losses went far beyond the $250,000. His credibility and relationships took a hit, and he missed out on a clean sale that could have benefited everyone involved. After months of stressful back and forth, I finally moved out on time, leaving the house exactly as the judge ordered, clean, bare, and free of all the upgrades I had once made. Every improvement was undone, every fixture replaced with its original, plain counterpart. I made sure to document everything carefully, with photos and receipts, to prove that I had fully complied with the court's demands and my lease obligations. Despite all the trouble, I have no regrets about standing my ground. It wasn't just about me. It was about sending a clear message that unfair treatment and unreasonable demands from landlords won't be tolerated. I chose to fight this battle by following the rules to the letter, and it made a difference. Sometimes you don't need to break rules to win. You just need to know them well enough to hold others accountable. To other tenants out there, my advice is simple. Know your rights, understand your lease, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Document everything, stay calm, and let the rules do the talking. To landlords, I say this: respect the agreements you make with your tenants. Fairness and clear communication are the foundation of a good landlord-tenant relationship. When those break down, everyone loses. In the end, I moved on with my head held high, proud that I did what was right and protected myself against greed and unfairness. This story is a powerful example of malicious compliance at its finest. Sometimes the best way to fight unfairness isn't through confrontation, but by carefully following the exact terms and conditions set out by the other party. When greed and abuse of power come into play, rigid compliance can become the strongest weapon. Fairness and clear communication are vital in any landlord-tenant relationship. When one side tries to bend the rules for personal gain, they risk losing far more than they imagined. This tale is a warning to landlords everywhere. Don't underestimate tenants and don't ignore your agreements. Trying to push people around with unreasonable demands will almost always backfire. For tenants, the takeaway is clear. Know your lease, document everything, and don't be afraid to stand up for your rights. Knowledge and patience can turn the tables in your favor, especially when dealing with unjust landlords. In the end, sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't drama or anger. It's simply doing exactly what you're told, down to the last detail. Because sometimes, the best revenge is just following the rules.
That wraps up today's episode of R/Payback. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories.